So there was a friend of mine. We both used to do these workshops together. And she was just saying, okay, let's practice our introductions. And I told her, I'm just a senior finance analyst. That doesn't look like much. She said, okay, but what do you do? I thought you did something pretty awesome. I said, like, what do I do? I head the 3P finance for this whole region, UAE, Saudi, Egypt. She was like, and you're saying that's not a big role? And it just hit me. I was like, hello, my designation may not be that much, but actually the role is pretty important. It's a regional role. It manages the finance for 50% of Amazon's business in this whole region. And that is the day I decided to make the distinction between the designation and the role. It doesn't have to be the same. And so when I talk about it these days, I never say my designation, but I always say what my role is in the business, in the company. And that makes things very different, because then suddenly in my head, it is important. And then I also think about, how can I make it matter? What more can I do? Because this is something very important for the whole business. So if I'm not showing up fully as myself, how is it not just impacting me, but also my organization? And then things start to change perspective, because then suddenly it's not just about you. Your impact outside of you also matters.
The Tom Screen podcast is owned and made possible by Ethical Marketing Service. If your business is struggling with Google or Facebook ads, maybe you're frustrated figuring it out, or there's a performance issue, Ethical Marketing Service has worked on hundreds of accounts and we can help in this area. We offer a 30-day money-back guarantee. If you would like to find out if we can help, it's a free, no salesy consultation call, and the link is in the description. Enjoy the episode. Thomas Green here with Ethical Marketing Service. On the episode today, we have Shruti Rustagi. Shruti, welcome.
Thanks, Thomas.
I am happy to have you. Would you like to take a moment and tell the audience a bit about yourself and what you do?
Absolutely. I am the CFO of a $4 billion business with Amazon Canada. Outside of my work, I also am a leadership coach. I'm ICF certified PCC coach, and I coach middle layer leadership, entrepreneurs, actors, very different walks of life, people all over the world. I also am a mom to 2 kids, and an explorer who's these days exploring the Pacific Northwest.
Well, the parenting is a leadership role as well, right? So,
absolutely. Negotiations involved.
Well, thank you for the introduction. I think by most metrics, people would consider you quite a successful individual. But as I understand it, hasn't always been that way. So can you share a little bit about how you were before you decided to fight for yourself, in your words?
Absolutely. So, of course, life has these valleys and troughs and crests, as we call them. So back in 2017, I moved from India to Dubai. My husband had taken a role, and I decided to take some time off, and I took about a year off, and I was exploring. I got myself trained as a coach and everything. And then I was ready to get back to the corporate world. Now, it so happened that Dubai, or United Arab Emirates at that time, was not necessarily, flowing with opportunities. And so the opportunity that I got, that was with Amazon, was really way below what my experience level would have joined at. So I was already a 12-year experienced professional by then. But what they were offering me was pretty much what people in the US would usually take after 4 to 5 years of experience. So it was suddenly like, oh, I'm starting again. And that was a big hit, although I took the role simply because I was like, yeah, it's Amazon. I'll make my way through. I'll grow. But the first year was a big hit. And um, it was pretty confidence shattering when every day I'm working with people who have less than half of my experience. And then I'm like, yeah, I'm being matched at the same level and everything. So that was a pretty rough patch. And there was this whole period of almost 6 months, the end of which my husband was like, you need to go see a psychologist. This is almost tethering on clinical depression now. And so how I basically got myself out of it was the transition. So after about 6 months, I realized, okay, something's going wrong. This is not working this way. And then I basically, took my own advice as I did. I had taken coaching training by then, and I could see the signs, I could see the warning signs. And I then applied some of it on myself.
Thank you for that. There's a lot to follow up on. And I think might be my perception, but I think there are a lot of people who have been in your position in the sense that they have been offered a job which is perhaps below what they have experience in, and they're struggling with that decision as to whether they should take it or negotiate or hold out for something better. So in terms of what you would do differently now, and also what advice you would give other people, what are your thoughts there?
The two things I would have done differently is one, definitely negotiate a lot better. At that time, since I had already seen multiple rejections, I was almost in the zone of, okay, I'm going to take whatever next opportunity I'm going to get. And that is what I wouldn't do. So that would be the first thing that I would do differently, is still keep the objectivity that whatever's happening right now is more a marker or indication of what's going on with the economy. And it's not a reflection on my capability, which is what I did not do. And hence, I did not negotiate as much as I should have. And the second thing that I should have done is, even when I had accepted the role, I should have fought for releveling, which again, I did not do, because my first 6 to 9 months, I was so much deep into I am not good enough that I did not even fight for getting releveled, even when I had joined. So those are the two things I would have totally done differently.
Did you consider yourself that you needed therapy? Did you think that was necessary?
I had considered, but like I said, I did not go down the path. I think I had enough support from the family and my own training that I started applying a lot of it on myself, and I was able to come out of it. But I can imagine that sometimes people, when they're done with acute feelings of not good enough and negativity, it could pretty much spiral down in that zone.
Okay, so what was it specifically that made it so difficult? Because on the one hand, you're taking a job that is, my perception is that it's perhaps beneath you, and on the other hand, you've got you said that you're not good enough. So what was it specifically about that experience which was difficult?
Sure. So I had, prior to that, worked in corporate strategy, mergers and acquisitions. Those were the areas I had worked in India, on very different sectors than e-commerce. So when I joined Amazon, there were multiple things different. I did not know the geography at all. I'd never worked in Middle East before. I did not know the industry at all, which was e-commerce, retail. I also Amazon has a very peculiar culture. And I know that now because I've been with them for almost 5.5 years and I love it. So it has a very peculiar culture and a very peculiar way they run and track and review businesses, which is not standard in most of the conglomerates, if you will. And of course, it's very different from how consulting works. So for me, everything was super new. The culture, the place, everything was new, and I was not giving myself time to ramp up. I was expecting that day one I should be delivering, day two I should be giving insights. I was too harsh, too high expecting of myself and not giving myself time to actually ramp up my learning. every mistake that I did, and it's common to make mistakes when you're doing something for the first time, right? We all know that. I was not giving myself leeway to make mistakes and own them. I would just either shrug it or I would be like, oh gosh, I'm so dumb. What am I doing? Why did I do this? I would not be able to speak up in meetings. So there was a lot going on at that time. And plus, because I had this nagging feeling at the back of my head that I am supposed to be at a higher position, but I'm here, which means I must be pretty bad at all of this. That kept going along with everything else that was happening. So, what made it super tricky was all of this negative self talk, along with the steep learning curve. And of course, with two kids, and back then they were as young as a 6 year and 2 year old. So, none of it was necessarily very helpful.
Yeah, that can be added stress for sure. But a summary of your answer, if I'm interpreting correctly, instead of being sort of too big for the role, you actually shrunk to fit the role. Is that a fair assessment?
You could say that. In fact, I shrunk to fit the role, as well as I almost thought I shrunk below it.
Mm.
In my head, I was not even there.
Well, you alluded to something which is taking your own advice. And I would like to know what that advice is, but also there's a kind of a lesson there in the sense that sometimes we know what the right thing to do is, but we actually don't follow our own advice. So how, if someone is doing that, how did you do it? And how would you encourage people to ensure that they are actually listening to what they know?
So it's a very interesting point, Thomas. Mostly when we dole out advices to people, we don't apply it on ourselves, saying and telling ourselves that, oh, this situation, it doesn't apply. It would apply generally to other people, but my situation is different. This is the common string that happens automatically for all of us. Taking my own advice basically happened. So there is this thing called morning pages. I don't know how many people have heard about it, but it's basically sitting down in the morning and like just writing, emptying out your mind on a piece of paper. So everything that comes to your mind, just write it down. I had recently read a book and I had given this advice to one of my coaching clients around the same time. And then I was like, okay, if I'm struggling so much with such negative feelings, why don't I just try it out? Maybe it'll work. And I was so convinced it's going to work for her. But for me, as you can imagine, my own thought process was maybe it will work. But I still gave it a shot. And that is what kind of changed my belief to, yes, my situation, I am actually in that situation and I'm not realizing it. So, and it was a weird point. So what had happened is, my daughter had come back from school, or it was one of those mornings, and she had come to me and she had said something like, I don't understand this. And I snapped back at her and I was like, this is so simple. How don't you not even get it? And like, you won't amount to anything if you can't even solve this. Like, this was my negativity just literally coming up on her. And the moment I said it, I was like, what am I doing? And I stepped out and I took a walk. And that was the moment that I realized, okay, something in my head is not right. I need to do something about this. This is not me. So that is when I figured that I am in that place where a lot of time my coaching clients are. I need to apply the same things to me. It is very much that.
So is that making time in the morning and sort of journaling, like you say, emptying your mind so that you get it all on paper, and it's almost like sharing a problem in the sense that it's separate from you. Is there anything in addition that you did to that?
I now journal in the night, and for a very different reason. But yes, what you said was exactly what I did back then for almost like a month and a half. I did my morning pages regularly. And yes, that's what it is. For a lot of people, sometimes writing is not an option. So they could also just use their phone and talk to it. So everything that comes to your mind, and you can have like a set time, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever that may be. Typically, 2 to 3 minutes does the work. You just talk, whatever comes to your mind. Even if the thought is, I don't know what to talk about, just say it. And as you get in the practice of doing it a lot more often, like you do it 3, 4 days continuously, the fifth day you'll start realizing the things which are, a bit more deeper will start coming out, the concerns, the issues. And then when you see yourself write it or hear yourself say it, is when it strikes you. Am I insane? Why am I being so negative about myself? Am I that bad? No. So that's what this does. It shows you kind of a mirror, which you badly need to see that time, but in a good way.
I can imagine it's a very good exercise to do because we can get a bit, I don't know, the thoughts is like the wood through the trees phrase where you just can't really see the big picture, right? And I can imagine it helping. But at this point in your story, we're at the point where you're still in the role that you're not necessarily happy with, but you're starting to come up with a solution, or you're starting to help yourself a bit, maybe being a friend to yourself. So what happens next?
So the role that I was in, see, here's where I would love to make one more slight distinction. The third thing that I had done, so two, I had told you that I should have negotiated better, and when I joined, I should have fought for myself better. The third thing which I actually did was what was the kind of a turning point is the designation and the role are not the same things. And that's the distinction that I made. And this happened in a very funny way. So there was a friend of mine. We both used to do these workshops together. We used to call them Up Your Game, and that was meant for women professional. And she was just saying, okay, let's practice our introductions. And I told her, I'm just a senior finance analyst. That doesn't look like much. She said, okay, but what do you do? I thought you did something pretty awesome. I said, like, what do I do? I head the 3P finance business, like 3P finance, for this whole region, UAE, Saudi, Egypt. She was like, and you're saying that's not a big role? And it just hit me. I was like, hello, my designation may not be that much, but actually the role is pretty important. It's a regional role. It manages the finance for 50% of Amazon's business in this whole region. And I think it's so that is when it just hit me. And that's why you need people around you to actually help you see some of those things which you can't see for yourself. And that is the day I decided to make the distinction between the designation and the role. It doesn't have to be the same. And so when I talk about it these days, I never say my designation, but I always say what my role is in the business, in the company. And that makes things very different because then suddenly in my head, it is important. And then I also think about how can I make it matter? What more can I do? Because this is something very important for the whole business. So if I'm not showing up fully as myself, how is it not just impacting me, but also my organization? And then things start to change perspective because then suddenly it's not just about you. Your impact outside of you also matters. And so that was the switching point of the turning point.
So your interpretation of how important you were in the company changed, and then that changed, my guess, it changed your actions, and then because you changed your actions, you changed your outcome. Is that about right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And you've mentioned a couple of times about what I refer to as the inner critic. The first question is, do you still have any of those thoughts now because you've got all the tools that you have? And for those people who do, how do you help them?
I still have them from time to time. I just know how to handle them better. I'll be completely honest. Like they will always raise their head, but I know that it's happening and I just know how to handle it. It becomes automatic. The one body of work that I have found amazingly helpful in inner critic is this work called Saboteurs by Shirzad Chamine. He's a Stanford professor, and if you type out Saboteurs and Shirzad Chamine, you will find it. He first of all, the very first tool that there is an assessment. It's a saboteur assessment. It's a free, publicly available tool. Anybody can take that assessment. And that gives you a language for what's going on inside your head. So that was very helpful for me. I found some of the saboteurs and inner critics in my head, and those gremlins, as we like to call them. And then it also goes on to talk about how do you address them. And of course, you find your own techniques. So I merge some of what he says to some of what I had learned, and just a general positive lifestyle, if you will. So the few things that worked for me, one was journaling that I already told you. The second was reframing. I figured that every time, so he talks about something called, 3 gifts technique. Every time you're in a situation which is seemingly negative, identify what good can come out of it. So finding that silver lining in the black cloud is basically what it is. And it works. Every single time it works. The third thing that I do is thinking long term. And I'll give you a very simple example. One of the times, and this is just literally day before yesterday, I had to take my son to his basketball class, and we were running like 5 minutes late. And at that point, he was like, Mom, just drive faster. And I said, you know what? If we meet with an accident, then you won't be 5 minutes late. We'll be a whole hour late. So think about the longer term. Right now, the risk is only 5 minutes. So let that be. But the risk could be much bigger. We both could be in the hospital. We both could be in the police station or wherever sorting out an accident. So I would rather just take it slow, and it's okay, be okay with 5 minutes late. And that's a principle I've applied day in and day out. Whenever I'm in the midst of a decision, I'm like, okay, long term, what makes more sense? Let's just do that. And that's it. There are no more. So that's why I said that the inner critics will rise once in a while. When I'm sitting in a meeting, I would have this thought that, oh my God, should I say it? I'm not so sure about the idea. I didn't think through it fully. How will people perceive me? And then I'll be like, does it matter? It's better that this group knows this idea and we can talk it and thrash it versus this group never even knowing what that idea could have been. And that's it. So it's those quick things that I think now in a bigger perspective and the long term. And that's it. The third thing that I have used, and I still use a lot, is talking out. So, if there's something that's bothering me, identify a friend. Most of the times it's my spouse, but sometimes it's just another friend, somebody appear at workplace, one of my mentors, anybody, and just talk it out and help, ask them to help me understand other perspectives that I'm not thinking of or not considering. So those in general have helped me really quell the inner critic and also take decisions better, if you will.
Love those. And thank you for sharing them. One of the things I was going to ask you about is actually habits. So how do you get in the habit of, making sure you're not going down that negative way of thinking?
It just requires, so it needs practice. It's a muscle. So you have to exercise it to build it stronger. The initial few times I would literally jot down and say, okay, today I will at least do it for one instance when it hits me. So be on a lookout. So very first thing before you even build that habit is being able to identify that's what's happening to you. So that spiral of negative thinking, you have to first of all recognize that you're in the spiral. And so start with just saying that, okay, this week I will at least identify 5 times, 3 times, whatever that may be, that I am in the negative spiral, and I'll stop it. I'll just say, okay, I don't want to be there. At least do that. The next week you can start with, okay, the next time I will think 3 positive things that can come out of this negativity. And if I'm not able to think, I'll ask somebody else for a more objective perspective. And so do that. The more you keep doing it to yourself, the more automatic it becomes, because it's basically the circuit in our brains. The reasons negative spirals happen is because we have a particular circuit. The moment a negativity hits, it just goes down in that circuit, goes down the loop, and it becomes negative. What you're trying to do is break that circuit and establish a new one that can move you in a positive direction. So just like you've done the negative spiral 100 times, you need to do this 100 times to make it just as automatic and as strong. So after a few iterations of it, you won't even go down the spiral. The moment it hits you, you know it's going to hit, and you automatically switch to your positive circuit. That's the only way it's going to work.
One of them you've mentioned is about obviously discussing with other people who maybe have a different perspective. It makes me think about perhaps the peer group. So for people who do and don't have those good people in their lives who will be able to give them a good perspective, have you got any thoughts on, I don't know, choosing or just in general about the peer group? Any thoughts there?
If people do not have close friends who they can speak to or any of that peer group, I think they may want to find mentors who could do something similar. So identifying people at work, at home, personal life, or wherever that may be, identifying one or two of those people. And those mentors could be basically people, they could be from any time in your life who you know will not judge you, who you're comfortable with thinking that they won't judge you. And I think that is what you need. That's what friends or peers that you would be needing. And identify at least one such person if you're able to. If not, talk it out to yourself. And as you say more and more, sometimes you're able to hear yourself and it makes things better. The second technique, which we sometimes use with people, is make that negative thinking its extreme version, put it on the loudspeaker. So for instance, if you're going down the spiral of, I'm not good enough, I always do this wrong, and so on, now make it in a loudspeaker. Make it worse. I'm the worst person. I know nothing about financial analysis. I always make these mistakes. I'm just pathetic at it. All my life, I've just got bad reviews. Just make it like the extreme bad. And when you make it extreme bad, it starts hitting you that that's not true. And then when you start eliminating what's not true, you actually start being objective about it. And then suddenly it hits you. It's not as bad as I think it is. And then you come to terms with what objectively is right, what is not. So that's a loudspeaker technique. That's again something that's used with people who are not able to, at that point in time, go speak to other people, don't have mentors, don't have peers. So this is another thing that they can do.
Yeah, I love that idea. You did speak previously about the fact that you had a mentor. How did that come about?
I have actually multiple mentors, and I have tried to identify the mentors in areas where I know I would be needing guidance. So anybody who's been there before me. So one of my mentors is basically from the organization, my own organization, but a broader team, because I want to understand from her how she has grown and how she has tackled the challenges which I'm expected to get. What should I be focusing on? What skills should I be developing? She's kind of like my professional mentor. There's another mentor who I have, and she's a friend and a mentor. And this person is more of my go-to person when I have doubts about any decisions that I'm making, and my husband's not either available or he's not able to give me a sense. So my husband is always for my personal things. He's my go-to discusser. But this friend of mine and a mentor now, she is the one who usually is able to talk more sense and objectivity into everything that I'm speaking. She is able to poke holes be completely honest with it, and able to help me think differently, which I'm not thinking at that point. There's another mentor who I have, and this person is great at networking. He is just literally amazing at forming connections and helping people, make other people, like make connections between people to help them and so on. And that, I think, is an area I would love to develop. So he's somebody who I would reach out to if I have any people kind of questions like, okay, this is the area I want to get a project in. Who should I be reaching out to? Who can I ask to be my sponsor? This is one area where I want to build my network more. How should I be thinking about it? And so on and so forth. So I would say that mentors are basically for a specific purpose. And so you should always think, what is it that you're seeking in terms of the problem, as well as what is it you're seeking in the mentor when you're identifying a mentor. And hence, it doesn't have to be just one person. Could be like multiple people. So,
One of your ways of dealing with, should we say, the inner critic is thinking about it from the long term. I'd like to know what your long term goals are. Do you have anything that you're trying to achieve or work towards at the moment?
My long-term goals have changed when I think of long-term as 5 to 10-year period. They have changed, they keep evolving. But one of my, as we call, a legacy goal, my legacy goal continues to be that on my deathbed, I just want to be able to think and thank the world and God. I'm a very spiritual person, that I made a difference to people's lives, and for the better. Like every time I think about any person who's come into my life, of course, after, I'm an adult, whoever's lives I've touched, I have made it or left it better, or the same, if not better, at least the same. And I've not made it worse in any way possible. And that is like literally the only North Star that I have. My goals keep changing. At some point, I had a goal to, I'm still not able to do that. Still haven't done that, the Kilimanjaro peak. That still continues to be a goal. And so on. So I have these whole sort of goals that me, and sometimes with my husband, we both have these goals. But yeah, they keep changing.
Well, the first one kind of sounds a little bit like a mission statement. And it does make me think that if you're coaching, right? You coach people.
Yeah, I do.
So if you're looking to make people's life better, I mean, I'm guessing the more you coach, the more you're going to be meeting that mission statement. Would you say that's accurate?
I would say that's accurate. And I like to apply those same principles even at work when I'm not coaching, where my role is finance and all of that. I'm still meeting people. I'm still touching their lives. And through my work, my words, both of them, I should be able to make something better for them. And that's why coaching is a big, big part of it. You rightly got it. And it also transcends my everyday life, my kids' PTAs, my neighbors, friends, anybody and everybody whose life I touch. However I can help and make it a tad better is what my mission statement or North Star is always.
Well, I think that's great. And I think a lot of the tools that you've given today can make a big difference to people's lives. So it's kind of like you're not doing it on an individual basis in this conversation, other than for me, of course. But you'll be reaching, more people. So I appreciate your time today. If people do want to hire you as a coach or follow you, where do they go?
So they can follow me on LinkedIn. That's where I am most active. And if they want to reach out to me, they can go to my website, www.shrutirustagi.com, SHRUTIRUSTAGI.com, and they can just block a 30-minute complimentary chat. That's the best way to reach me.
And do you have any closing thoughts for us today?
Just one. Always own your awesomeness. We're all awesome. We just need to own it.
Well, you've been an awesome guest today. So, Shruti, thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Thomas, for having me here.